or good morning, depending on what time zone you're in. I'm Dr. Sharon Milgram, and I direct the NIH Office of Intramural Training and Education, and I'm going to kick off our series on the mental health and well-being of biomedical researchers with a talk on culture change and well-being, trying to put into context what each of us can do to promote a healthy and well biomedical research workforce. Just to give you a sense of the series, we're going to meet monthly. It's often the first Monday of the month, but not always. So be careful in looking at the schedule. And we're going to move through a variety of topics. This is the third offering of the series, and there are tapes on many topics already covered. And rather than reiterating the same topics, we decided to bring some back that we didn't do last year, add some new ones that dive a little bit deeper into various behaviors that can be unhelpful, get in our way, address behavior change, habit formation, etc. So it's a little bit of a different strategy. Each of the talks will have a speaker or two, followed by an opportunity for small group discussion led by one of the OITE wellness advisors, with the goal of giving people a chance to share their perspectives and experiences, to teach and learn together in community. So much of our well-being and resilience is tied to our feeling that we belong in important communities. For some of the topics, but not all of them, we are also going to host a supplemental session. At NIH, we host a program called Thriving Thursday, where we gather during lunch to talk about various topics around well-being. And so you can see here in this supplemental sessions column some follow-up. And anybody who comes to the webinar is more than welcome to join at the follow-up. It would be helpful to hear the webinar. And so we really hope that either you're here in person and then come for the supplemental session, or you register and watch the tape later. So as many of you who know me know, I'm a scientist, not really an expert in well-being. And this comes from a paper from my research group long ago, work by a really talented postdoc, Pinbo Wang, together with some of my collaborators at the UNCCF Center. And I want to start with some science, because it's interesting how often when I'm thinking about issues within the training space, I think of analogies out of the research space. And we were really interested in cell signaling and airway epithelial cells. And in this particular set of experiments, which Pinbo published back a long time ago, he used electrophysiology to probe microcompartments and to show that while one ion channel could be dispersed throughout the plasma membrane and in various compartments of the cell, it was activated in different ways. Every little micro compartment had a different regulatory mechanism. And one of the key things that I want to bring up today as we think about culture change and well-being in science is that science is one big, large community and many, many micro communities. And there are various climates in different environments. And that one of the things we want to do as we think about well-being is look at our immediate environments, our own microclimates, so that we can begin by taking care of ourselves there, and then start to think of the broader compartments. Just like, you know, the cell has its various organelles and various compartments, we move through science in various communities and various compartments. And I think that in some ways that helps us think about culture change in a more palatable way, because culture change is really difficult and many, many folks in our community are struggling, and these headlines really highlight that. And sadly, there are many, many more that one can find in a quick Google of mental health and well-being of graduate students, postdoctoral researchers, biomedical scientists. I don't think any of us want to be in a community that drives burnout and mental health problems. We don't want to be a part of a community that allows racism and other structural barriers to success to persist. We enter the scientific arena with the goal of improving the world and the health of its people, the health of the environment, the climate. I mean, we enter with so many big, lofty goals, and yet here we are. We find ourselves sitting in a community that has strikingly high rates of depression and anxiety in its graduate students and in other members. And so it really does drive a discussion around what is good about our environment and what is it that needs to change. And culture change is about looking at what needs to change together as a community. Many, many times as we talk about some of the issues facing science, the role of PIs come up. I know we use the word PI and mentor or boss interchangeably, but the honest truth is that we should be careful about that, because we know that there are PIs who are stellar mentors and who drive the formation of very supportive environments. And there are PIs who don't pay a lot of attention to the climate within their group, PIs that are unkind, that really drive unacceptable and harassing behavior. And obviously, that is a major role in any kind of climate change in science, any kind of improvement to the culture. There is an element of top-down. That said, the boss and the head of the research group is a major factor, but not the sole factor. Each and every one of us within an environment plays a role in how that environment thrives or doesn't thrive. And so while there needs to be a lot of discussion about what allows issues to persist top down, I think that there also needs to be discussions about what all of us can do, leadership from within, support for each other when it comes to talking about culture change. And so I hope that I think a lot of times discussions around improving the climate of science and improving the mental health of individuals within the community gets caught at, but the PIs need to do better. And I do want to sit there with that a little bit, but I hope we don't get caught in that, and that we try today to expand the discussion to what each and every one of us can do to make some change. So all of us do our best when we're in an environment where we feel psychologically safe, where we can learn about our strengths and our developmental needs, where we can embrace our vulnerabilities, the things that don't come easy to us, to grow and learn. We do our best when we have access to critical resources with few barriers, including the barrier of time, right, where people pull down barriers so that we can access those resources. We do our best when we feel a part of communities that are important to us. And there are a variety of communities within our discipline, within our training level, based on various identities that we have that we hold dear, right? We really thrive when we can feel a part of communities that are learning and growing together. We do our best when we are seen and heard and valued as the diverse and multifaceted people that we are. We are not hands with keyboards or hands with pipettes. We are so much more than that. We bring so much more to the table than our ability to design experiments, follow through, etc. Right? We're so much more than that. We need to drive the agenda at least some of the time. We need to know our values and how those values impact our actions. And most importantly, if we want to be well, if we want to move through the world feeling good about ourselves and our place within both the world and the scientific community, we have to have time to take care of ourselves and our lives. You know, overwork drives burnout. And nobody can be their most creative problem-solving self when they're exhausted and burned out. And the honest truth is we need to be in a culture that embraces this philosophy, that articulates this philosophy, that really works to make sure that we can take words and put them into an actual climate that people work in. The system itself drives some of the issues that we see around mental health and well-being. This is a stressful, high knowledge environment where no one or many people fail to put an emphasis on taking time to take care of yourself. It's not considered important. And the honest truth is there can be either real or perceived career consequences about setting boundaries and saying, I need time away to rest and recharge. People are asked to put their personal life on hold for long periods of time. And, within the work we do, there's no right answer and minimal short-term gratification. That one figure probably took us years to get to. I think we tried 3 journals before we landed on a publication. So we work for long periods of time with little short-term gratification. Also, competition is intense. And if you enter the field with this notion that we do research to benefit people, the competition is really sort of at odds with that. Wait a minute, aren't we supposed to be working together to solve problems instead of rushing to beat each other to publish? We aspire to have a really diverse and inclusive community within the community of research. But the honest truth is that there are a lot of structural barriers. There's a lot of discomfort. There's a lot of well-intentioned actions that sometimes can be unwelcoming, putting additional burden on trainees and staff who bring important differences to the community, but aren't always welcomed as they should be. We also work in a community where we focus on subject matter expertise, and we are not encouraged to develop our interpersonal skills or emotional intelligence. I can't believe that I started my job as a faculty member at UNC Chapel Hill some very long time ago without a single management course. Not a mentoring course, not a management course. And things have changed to some degree, but there's still not enough quality training available. Many PIs, maybe some, I don't know. It's something that I think bears some discussion, but there's a sense that many PIs in leadership have a fixed view of what STEM careers are preferred. That if you want to go into industry, it's less than. As you're picking a career outcome, it needs to be the most prestigious. It needs to involve the most intense research that is possible. There are a lot of things that drive people to feel unwelcome because of what they want to do in their career. There's so many feelings underneath the surface. And this is not an environment that always welcomes a discussion of those feelings. And finally, the system itself drives a lot of the tensions and stress because PIs are rewarded for research outcomes and not so much mentoring outcomes. And when you put on top of that, that we weren't given management tools to succeed, it's a system that is really under strain. Now, individuals also bring vulnerabilities to the system, right, and to the table. I mean, we are all human beings, and we are all moving through this space with forming and reforming sense of self, sense of what we want to do in our career, sense of needs. Our values change. The pandemic has triggered a major reassessment of values for many of us. And there's a lot of people creating and recreating themselves. A lot of us haven't had a lot of practice with frustration tolerance. And when we get frustrated, we can struggle to stay calm. Put on top of that imposter fears and other cognitive distortions that make us feel that we are in unwelcoming environments where catastrophes are awaiting us every day. Perfectionism is something many of us deal with. Sometimes seeing this as a driver of success, but sometimes appreciating that it is adding so much to our already heavy plate. The interplay of perfectionism and procrastination can lead to a lot of feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. We enter the space with trauma. There is trauma within the research space from prior research groups. There is trauma in our world around us right now, every day, both community and collective traumas. And, again, if some of our energy is going to holding ourselves safe and together, then it's really hard to show up and be fully present. Feedback is tough. Even when it's given well, so many of our students and all of us have invested a lot to get this far, and to be told you're falling short, or to be told this thing that you poured your heart into isn't there yet, can really be difficult. And really, if you look at it, the list goes on. I won't go through every bullet, but I think it's important to appreciate that as you look at a list like this, that it makes a lot of sense that the community is struggling. Coming to work with health and mental health concerns, trying to deal with all of these big issues in a system that adds stress on top of whatever individual stress, is really asking a lot of people. And if we want to improve the mental health of our community, I think it's important to look at this list and then sit and say, so what can we do to change systems? And what can we do to provide resources for individuals so that we can all thrive within these systems? Systems can be like, I alluded to at the beginning in the various microclimates. A system can be your research group. It can be your department, the program that you're in, the institution that you're at. It can be the broader global research community. There are so many systems within a system within a system. And when I mean resources, I mean things like workshops and on-demand training, peer groups, support groups, individual support, coaching, anything that is needed to help an individual deal with their vulnerability in the moment, their struggle in the moment, or how to tackle a systemic struggle or systemic barrier in the moment. We really, I think, need to work at all of these levels. I've been thinking about this a lot, even before the pandemic, but much, much more in the last few years. And I think one can come up with lists of, here's what to do to succeed or to thrive. And I think every list is sort of incomplete. But lately, as I think about this and the culture change that I hope to drive at NIH and within the communities I move in, I've sort of been thinking about these 6. And the first is a willingness to really focus on self-awareness and self-reflection, and to be willing to change. I mean, the honest truth is that our habits and our ways of being have gotten us pretty far, so we're sort of attached to them. But the more I look at times when my behavior wasn't helpful, when I contributed to the problems in science as opposed to the solutions in science, I appreciate that it starts with self-awareness and self-reflection and sort of a willingness to try to do something a little bit differently. I think that requires some curiosity and not judgment, and it certainly requires some kindness to let ourselves off the hook while acknowledging that we can't leave it there. We have to keep trying to change. So it involves some self-compassion and also compassion and empathy for others. All of us need to be more open to using resources, both proactively and in times of distress. I think that most of us probably are aware of some of our warning signs when our mental health is starting to get shaky, and we just have this tough it out attitude, and then we move a little bit too far along a continuum, and then we find ourselves in a really hard spot. So I think that using resources is a big part of the pillars to thrive. It's also the ability to lean into discomfort and other uncomfortable emotions, right? I mean, none of us want to say we need help or we messed up or we're really struggling. But when we don't lean in to those uncomfortable emotions and we ignore them, we're just sort of putting off an issue. A big part of improving the culture of science is a focus on relationship building and empathic communication and finding ways to resolve conflict in more healthy ways. It means rethinking power structures and power dynamics, which is a big part of the community that we all work in and is something that will take time to reevaluate. I think we also need plans for when things are difficult. I think many of us look at the time when times are going well and we say, oh, we can put this aside, everything is okay. But eventually someone around us that we care about is struggling. And if we don't know how to step in and help, if we don't have a plan for ourselves and others, then in the moment, we're left not knowing what to do. And then one last thing, as I've thought about this more and more, so many of us are both mentees and mentors simultaneously, especially our trainees. But everyone at a point in their career makes a transition, right? I'm mostly a mentee to, oh, now I'm doing a lot of mentoring. And I think we need to support everyone along this continuum. PIs need ready access to training and more support. Administrators, other research supervisors within the group, trainees and trainees who are also serving as mentors, all have unique needs and need services and support to thrive. So another way I've been thinking about pillars is this picture here, where you can imagine a table, and we are standing in communities on either shaky ground or ground that has a lot of support underneath it. And if you have a table and one leg is shorter than the other or not being tended to, the entire table is shaky, right? And you can't really stand on a really shaky table. We tend to think about research skill development, that we entered science to do research, we entered science to work along that continuum. From bench to bedside, and that's what we should focus on. But the honest truth is well-trained researchers, well-trained healthcare providers, individuals working in the various important careers within the scientific enterprise will be well-trained in all of these areas. Improve one, improve the others, ignore one, and you end up with a shaky enterprise. And I think that our thinking within this space has evolved from, oh, we should teach research skills to, oh, we should add some professional skills, like how to read a paper or how to write a paper, how to write a grant, how to give a good talk. And then we said, wait a minute, we should add a little bit of career development, how to do an informational interview, how to write a job packet. But it's really so much more than that. And we have to wrap our head around how many different areas of expertise are required to build a healthy research and healthcare workforce. And it's really probably this is incomplete, and you could suggest legs for this table, other areas of training. We like to say in the Becoming a Resilient Scientist series, to do well, we have to be well. And we've extended that over time here in the OITE to treat others well. We have to be well ourselves. But I want to do that in a little bit of a different way today. Very, very often after making that point, we do an assessment about dimensions of well-being for individuals. Today, I want to do a quick thought about what are we each doing as individuals, but then think about what are we doing as a group, whether that is the research group, your graduate student group, your a group at your school here at NIH. What are we doing as a group? Lots of the questions Will overlap between the two. And what we're going to do is spend a moment as we go through this, just asking yourself, how am I doing in that regard? Or am I even thinking about this at all? And if you notice, it says, I do my best to, not I always do, because none of us, hit the nail on the head every time. We're all works in progress. Sometimes we do better than other times. So just pay attention as you hear these. I do my best to tend to my own health and well-being, and I support others in doing the same. I do my best to find time to learn and practice proactive coping strategies, including resilience training. Of course, being here today is finding time to learn and practice positive coping strategies. So I want to acknowledge that. I do my best to set boundaries and unplug from work. Such a hard thing in hierarchical environments, such a hard thing in a community and culture that sends a regular message that we should be working and thinking about science all the time. A big part of well-being is our assertiveness. Can we self-advocate and set boundaries? So I do my best to develop assertiveness, relationship management, and emotional intelligence skills. We need all of those to thrive. I do my best to think about environment when choosing positions. We have been acculturated to say, where can we do the exact techniques we want to do, or work on the exact problem we want to work on, get the publications in the journals that we have been taught are the places to publish. But do we think about environment? We know that being in a positive environment is protective for the mental health and well-being of biomedical trainees. Do we put that education into action? I do my best to learn about resources on my campus and beyond. I also do my best to engage in important communities that nurture all facets of my life. I do my best to reflect on my blind spots and my biases about mental health, about career outcomes, about anything that is getting in my way of success and anything that is laying down barriers for others. I do my best to make sure I learn about mental health first aid while understanding my role and respecting boundaries. We want to help our friends. A lot of times people come to these workshops and they ask questions about, how do I help someone else? And I think that's such a key, important question. But do we understand boundaries, our role, what we can do when we need to reach out and get guidance from others at our institution or in our communities? And then finally, do I engage in important discussions about culture change in science? And again, you're here, so clearly working in that direction. So Uli is going to activate a poll to give us a chance to reflect on this a little bit. Just go ahead, you can vote for as many of these as you'd like. And I'd like you to sort of own with some satisfaction the things that you are working on. Even the works in progress where, some days are better than others. So all you need to do is put your phone camera onto the QR code. And sometimes I think we get caught in what we're not doing. So for a moment, let's really enjoy some of our successes. So of course, when you take a poll like this in a group that came voluntarily to a program, you're going to see a lot of positive things like engaging in discussions about culture change, working hard to tend to our own well-being and supporting others. And I know sometimes what we do is we gloss over the positives here and we say, but what about other people? So for a moment, let's just enjoy these results, which to me, I think are really important and deserve a moment of sort of satisfaction. There's learning in here. I think that given the mental health crisis in this country, in the world, and in our community, maybe a lot of us want to keep our eye out for a mental health first aid course. I wonder why it is that engaging in supportive and nurturing communities is low, something to reflect on. I know a lot of people register for workshops and don't come, and maybe that's reflected here in this number. That said, I really feel sort of gratified by looking at this. All right, Uli's going to go ahead and give us a chance to reflect one more way about this, and that is what we would like to add or do more of. Whether it was on this list or not, as you think of yourself within this intense and somewhat difficult environment, what is it that you would like to do more of or explore more? And this will be text, so it will be hard for us to see all of them. I bet that there are people cheering about the setting boundaries between work and personal life. Step away from the computer and meet people face to face. Less work, learning more about positive thinking, mental health first aid to support others, setting boundaries. Would like to learn more about mental health first aid, make friends, some trauma, learning about trauma, leave the phone behind. Boy, isn't that one for all of us. Take sick time, more self-awareness, explore and be sensitive to the power hierarchy, empower grad students to speak up when PIs are too demanding, finding more de-stressing strategies. You know, everything here as this list comes, and I'm going to let it just roll, everything here, right? If we look at this as step-by-step progress, there's a way in all of this. And so I think what we're going to do is let this run for a little bit more. There's more people typing because I'm hoping to pull this out and use it as we work in other arenas to have discussions about this. So thank you. Uli, let's let those few people typing finish. You know, I want to make a comment. There are some, I wish I had more understanding of career paths. You know, what a great place to start learning about resources. What's available to me on my campus? What's available to me virtually? The OITE YouTube channel has lots of career videos. National meetings have nice career programs, right? So there's entryways for all of these. Great, thank you, Uli. So I want to thank all of you for sharing. Now, what I'd like to do is think a little bit as a group. Some of these won't apply if you're thinking about a trainee group, you know, but some are really uniquely related to the research space. Be a little bit flexible if you feel it doesn't fit for you. Imagine how that prompt might fit, and maybe you'll put one or two aside. As a group, we do our best to develop a framework for discussing issues that give voice to all and hold all accountable. Respect that each person has their own experience and that all experiences are equally valid no matter how different they are. Appreciate that disagreement and conflict are inevitable, and so we work to do it well. Not only are they inevitable, but they can be done in really healthy ways that help groups grow and learn. As a group, we do our best to understand the importance of honoring a process for giving and receiving feedback, for repairing relationships, and for making authentic apologies, right? It is challenging to work in environments where everyone has their view of how to get things done. Everyone wants to contribute in their way, and it means that we're going to step on toes. It means that we're going to sometimes misunderstand. Sometimes we're going to forget to communicate. And so having a way of finding common ground and repairing relationships is a key thing. As a group, we do our best to hold group meetings and an annual retreat focused on well-being, resilience, diversity, allyship, relationship management, you name it, all the important things. We do our best to talk about stress management when we set goals and discuss our individual development plans. We establish and honor pro-vacation policies. We have snow days and other fun group activities. Snow days is an OITE tradition where no matter what the weather is, we all had a long, hard week and we say, oh, it's snowing, and everybody knows that they can pop out a few hours early. We do our best to advertise and support attendance at campus-wide activities that support diverse trainees and diverse career outcomes. We do our best to maintain healthy boundaries and to use appropriate institutional support systems as needed. Now, some of these are really directed to the leader of the group. Some of these, I think, for trainees are a great way to start thinking about choosing healthy groups. And there are things where leadership from within can bubble up a great change. And so take a look at this list, and we're going to do the same thing. Uli is going to activate a poll, and we're going to look at what's happening within groups. And again, as this poll happens, I want to acknowledge that a lot of responsibility rests with leadership. That individuals can want to change this, but there is a certain hierarchy and power dynamic. That said, what here are you doing? Could you do? I'm really hoping that we'll see a similar outcome as before. I think that maybe a model of change is that we begin to change ourselves, and then we realize we want to change the things around us. And I hope that we're seeing that sort of inflection point in discussions around health and well-being in our community. And some of these towards the bottom, right, maybe they're sort of low-hanging fruit. You don't have to, looking at this, including stress management in an individual development plan, it doesn't have to be a big, huge section, but you could, at the end of putting together all of your goal setting and all of your progress, you could just pause for a moment and reflect on what you've been doing in the area of stress management. Even better if you discuss it with your PI, even better if your PI or boss brings it up. But looking at some of the things towards the bottom, handling disagreement and conflict well is about a quarter. It's interesting, we have a climate assessment we do, and one of the pieces of data that came out of that is that PIs who won't engage in conflict management tend to have more issues within their group. Not a big surprise, right? Conflict happens, so if we ignore it, it isn't going to go well. So there's something that we can all look at and work on. A lot of things like feedback, right? Learning how to give feedback. That's partially about taking time to read books, to practice, to get coaching, right? So some of this is maybe looking at this list and having it help us prioritize our time a little bit. All right, so there's the things that people are currently doing. And now we're going to go ahead and take a moment. Same thing. What are some things you'd like to do more of and think about? If you are the PI, what will you put into place? If you are a trainee or a member of the group, what would you like to encourage? If you're an administrator who runs graduate or postdoc programs, what would you like to do to support your community in growing in this area? Yeah, stress management, individual development plans, I think is a real low-hanging fruit. I've had the pleasure of talking about stress management with a group of postdocs in a program that I'm involved in running, and I've learned a lot from them. More open discussions of mental health and well-being, a conflict resolution workshop, dedicating a lab meeting to talking about it, developing some peer support systems. And there are some people who acknowledge that they feel powerless and that their PI doesn't care about this. And I think giving voice to that, the pain of that, and the importance of us supporting people through that, I think is important. So I thank you for being willing to share that. more discussions on emotional well-being, more group activities. Pro-vacation things. There's a colleague of mine, every time I get one of her emails, I smile, because at the end it says, if you got my email after hours, don't feel any need to respond. And it just is like such a little supportive thing, right? So what could we do to promote more separation of work and life and more vacation time? Weekly lab meetings where we bring up concerns, no email on weekends, or at least email that we can control. Sometimes I want to take an hour or two, but I don't want to feel that I have to. And I have a lot of power, which a lot of people don't, right? So it makes it a lot harder. Adding more slow time into our schedule so we can catch up. Decrease the perceived sense of urgency. That's really good language. Using the send later button, no meetings over lunch, having more dialogue with leadership, meeting free days. There's a lot of nice suggestions here. And there's some comments here about wishing there were more consequences for PIs that mistreat students and allow toxicity in their groups. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the next slide. A lot of really important commitments to think about here. Great, thank you, everyone. Uli, go ahead and move on. Thank you. So a lot of things we are doing, a lot of things we wish to do, some real pain in the fact that some people are in very difficult environments, some frustration and anger that sometimes there aren't consequences, a lot of different things in this one slide. Now, the honest truth is that if we wish to really have a well community, institutions need to do a lot. There needs to be vigorous anti-harassment and anti-discrimination policies. There needs to be a way of taking care of the vulnerable members of the community. So there need to be some very loud student advocates built into that system. And when I say student, I mean postdocs, postbacks, I mean trainees in general. I think that institutions need to develop well-being and resilience programs and integrate them into the broader curriculum. There should be a well-being and resilience section in handbooks and on websites. There's a lot of people looking for support in this area, right? And who aren't trained and don't know where to begin. So universities and institutions need to provide the resources, making training and coaching a priority for PIs, supporting exemplars who are well-being champions, giving them resources and support so that they can do their work, advertising campus-wide and national programs that support trainee health and well-being, that support diversity of career outcomes, that acknowledges the importance of all types of STEM careers. We need to know about each microclimate, right? We started by saying each of us was in a unique microclimate. There needs to be a culture of regular, unbiased outside climate assessments, and then there need to be ways to address issues. That includes, I think, setting aside funds to help trainees resettle in supportive climates when necessary, including supporting international trainees who are even more vulnerable because of visa issues. I think that there are a lot of trainees like the one who shared, I just wish I could get out of my group. And then finally, there were comments about doing more with peer support programs. I think those are very, very important. Trainee well-being committees, trainee peer mentoring committees, but we need to be careful. It is not the trainee's responsibility, the emotional labor, the time that it takes, right? We say, take time to take care of yourself. We can't then in the same sentence say, but please do all of this at the same time. It is the work of the institution. Now, I think that sometimes we look at lists like that and we say we're powerless to change things at institutions. I think Two things about that. The first is to know what is happening at your institution, and the second is to find the people working to make change. There are a lot of discussions about this, and student voices, administrator voices, PI voices saying, here's what would help go a long way. So I don't want to be like overly optimistic and pretend that these are easy problems. They're not. But I do think that we are at this point where collective voice is helping to make change. Broader science can do things as well. All research meetings should have well-being programs. OITE will be at the American Society for Cell Biology in collaboration with the society, and the Chad Zuckerberg Foundation will be leading a set of mental health and well-being workshops. I think that research meetings should be a place where we can get this information. I think if grants had a section on trainee well-being, when you applied for a training grant, it would send a big message. Fellowships could be more easily transferable when poor mentoring and climate are a factor, right? And there need to be safe reporting systems so that grantees who are mistreating trainees and others aren't allowed to do that. NIH has two reporting structures in place, one for intramural trainees that you should have learned about through the Rights and Responsibilities lecture, and one for extramural staff and trainees. You can report harassment happening at your university to the NIH extramural research leadership, and they will do their best to strategize and provide support. People can make anonymous reports because we appreciate the risk and the concern for safety. And so I think it's important to acknowledge the intersection of bullying environments and poor health and mental health outcomes. And we will not tackle one without tackling the other. And I think reporting is a part of that. Anyone can email me if they want a discussion about how to make a report. I know the folks in extramural and am happy to provide support there. And I likewise in terms of people here at NIH. A lot gets in our way when we talk about culture change. There's a lot of raw and uncomfortable feelings from what has happened and what is happening now. It makes it sometimes very hard to imagine a better place. I mean, there's hurt and there's anger and there's frustration and disappointment and shock and dismay, and nobody went into science for this. And so I think that those feelings really get in the way. Change is always hard, even exciting change, and this is hard change. I mean, the honest truth is, no matter the change, there's sort of an old way of doing things, and then there's a new way of doing things, and in between is a huge amount of uncertainty, and you're not quite sure what's going to happen. You have to let go of some things before you can fully have a view of what's coming next. So change is hard, but change that comes together with raw feelings of being wronged or being blamed, combinations of the two, I think make this really, really harder. On top of that, it's a really hard time to be having this discussion. You know, we're grappling with a lot for ourselves, our families, communities. Violence in our communities, climate change disasters, the most divisive political period we've been in, unwelcoming time for immigrants, and science is built on a community of immigrants, near recent and not so recent. I think that you know, there's just a lot happening. And so to say I'm going to roll up my sleeves and do something about culture change in science when I might have a full plate is asking a lot. And that's one thing that I really want to stress. We don't have to do everything right away. And we really need to start in our microclimates. You know, so the first step to dealing with the inertia generated by these barriers is to talk about them. Right? Because our fatigue and disappointment tells us to hide and go away. But what we need to do is sort of lean into the discussion and try to resolve issues, whether they're small ones or big ones, in the moment, they're the issue that we choose to tackle. Not everything needs to be a really grand gesture. Sometimes we make very small changes. If we view all of this as a work in progress, I think it's easier to see the progress and acknowledge the wins. The honest truth is the fact that this is the third series on mental health and well-being, and there are people here, is a sign of progress. The first time I hosted a meeting and we talked about health and well-being of trainees, there was a discussion about whether we really needed that session. Now the discussion is, should we add a day? Is there more training? Can we get more involved? So we are making progress. Change in one microclimate helps drive change in others, even if the change is just how you view science. So the way you talk to others about science, the way you engage with others is better. And so this is why I think trainees who say, right now I have to take care of myself, I agree. That's where it starts, because every bit of change we make within our microclimates makes a big difference. So sometimes we really want to make the big change. And I think that my hope is, that many of us will step up and say we'd like to make some big change. But sometimes we make small change and it is really big because it ripples and ripples and ripples. So I'm just going to end by sharing an earworm. I think many of you know earworms are those phrases or music or bits of a poem that get stuck in your ear. And no matter how many years after you learned it, it's still there. So I'm going to share an earworm. It's actually in Hebrew, and many of you can't read this, and that's okay. I'll read it for you and explain it. This is an earworm that has stuck with me for 30 plus years. And I think it's a great way to wrap up. It's a song that I learned at probably in elementary school. And it starts with Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, you don't have to finish the work, right? Which I think is a good thing, because we work in these big, on these big problems, and we don't have to finish the work. When it comes to the climate change, when it comes to improving things in our graduate program, within our branch, within our research group, we don't really have to finish the work. It would be nice if we could, but we don't have to. But here's the other key part. You're not allowed to ignore it, though. And I think some of us ignore our own well-being because of the culture. So if you're going to pick up one thing from today, it would be to change the culture of science means for me to start changing the way I view myself within this system. I have a right to be here, to set boundaries, to take care of myself, to be valued and to be appreciated. And if we start there, we will make rippled culture change happen. The second part of this song is really sort of odd, and I don't know why. For a long time, I struggled with why I couldn't quite let go of that. It's about what's called the Beis Hamikdash, or the Holy Temple, and history tells us it was destroyed twice and rebuilt, and there's a belief that it will be rebuilt someday. And I'm like, why is this in my head, given that this is a belief system that I don't always spend time reflecting on? But I think each of us have these things that are really important to us, and those are the things that we should work on. So whatever it is within this culture change realm that matters to you, grab that. Don't do it all. Don't get overwhelmed by the fact that there's so much. And I think each and every one of us picking our place, or the thing that really matters to us, then we're going to get into an interesting place. So that is what I have to say by way of introduction to the small groups. Because we wanted to do the breakout rooms right out of here, I assume that the questions are here. And I'm going to try to find them. There are some questions whether the Zoom links will change for each meeting. They're different for each of them. There will be a recorded session. I don't know how you get to it, but Uli, when she sends out the email, will let you all know. There's a suggestion here about adding an understanding of mental health and encouraging people to take care of themselves as part of onboarding, and I will certainly add that to the slides. There's a question about examples or outlines of what would be in a well-being plan. It could be that you're going to focus on taking a walk at midday. It could be that you acknowledge that it's been a very intense semester, and so you're going to tack on some extra vacation days. It could be making a commitment, to getting to the gym more often. It could be finding a student support group, a dissertation writing support group, going to an affinity group and getting together and having lunch. It could be lots of things. And hopefully in the small groups, there will be some discussions of that. There's a really personal question about an issue with a PI. Just send me an email and I will meet with you to talk about it. There are some lovely quotes here adding to mine. I sometimes think that's what we need. We should share those positive things about the things that keep us going. So thank you. For sharing that. Somebody pointed out there are 2 trillion galaxies and we're a small part of one of them. I love that idea that we really are in our own little bubbles. We change that bubble and somehow it bubbles up. Lots of things here supportive to everyone. So thank you all for those supportive messages.